Thank you very much, Dr. Bhanu, and thank you to CII for taking the lead in bringing this topic. Uh, we have a very diverse and experienced panel today to discuss this agenda. No, I have spent a lot of time in my past life looking at digital closely, right? And we've seen the pervasiveness of how digital technologies tend to, over a period of time, change the fundamentals of how you work. And supply chain is no different. And when we look at the ability to create, and particularly with supply chain now becoming a lot more nimble, the need, particularly with the post-COVID scenario, the way the channels are getting proliferated, the SKUs are getting proliferated, the product lead cycle time is becoming shorter. So you have both new product development happening at the same time, obsolescence happening in a big way. There's a clearly a need to look at supply chain, the underlying design holistically, thoroughly, and the room for error becomes that much smaller. And I think in last couple of years, we're seeing this emergence of the ability to drive, leverage digital technologies to simulate, to do mock-ups, to create a scenario building and other means that allow organizations to think through what if scenarios and take appropriate decisions a lot more faster than they otherwise would have. If I take one simple example of how networks used to be, typically, historically, distribution-oriented companies would redesign their supply chain network once in 10 years or so. When I meet customers today, we realize that even a network that is designed 2 to 3 years ago probably doesn't suit them anymore, and there's a need to possibly relook at it because the channel diversity may have significantly altered, or the product portfolio may have shifted, and so on and so forth. And the customer preferences are obviously fairly fickle these days. So the need for therefore creating rapid prototyping, rapid analysis, providing the level of insights is a very critical need. And today's conversation, we will talk a little bit about what is the art of possible, how do we go about leveraging digital twin, and what different organizations, service providers, advisory organizations are doing in this space. Let me maybe start and invite Mr. Balaji Redipalli. He's a veteran in the industry, comes from consumer goods background, and he spent a lot of time working with leading organizations like Cadbury, Britannia, Carlsberg, and he currently heads supply chain as well as IT for Borosil. So he's the right, I would say, mix of the both backgrounds, both from a functional as well as technology side of it. So Balaji, maybe let me ask you, what do you think from your, I mean, you've seen very rapid growth in your organization and very, very shifting channel, mix for you, right? How do you think a digital twin would help you to be faster in the marketplace, take right cost decision, and possibly take out inefficiencies from your business?
Good morning, Giriya. Good morning, panelists, and good morning, all the audience. Thanks for that nice introduction. So in consumer goods in general, over the past several years, one of the shift we are seeing is more towards digital. And I feel this is a big shift going forward. I want to just illustrate my response to your question, Giriya, using a small deck, which I will put it up on the screen now. I hope everyone can see that. Yeah,
yes,
okay, thanks. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Okay, so now let me start with the analogy. When we talk about twins, what comes to mind is Indian movies to me first. Okay, so on the right you can see a movie by our famous Rajinikanth from the Tamil film industry, and there was a good guy who was a professor, and he had a twin, an evil twin, and then the story goes on. And even if you go back several decades, there is a movie called Sita or Gita where the two twins have opposite characteristics. So if you look at even the Indian film industry over several years, we had concept of twins. Of course, it's a physical twin, and there has been a variety of relationship between the twins. So sometimes there are brothers, and if you pinch or hit one brother, other brother gets the pain. So there is a lot of this kind of relationships we had in the Indian movies. I thought just that will be a very a apt analogy to start our discussion. Coming to supply chain, I think there are three key areas in supply chain where we need to explore digital twins. The first is the planning systems, and this is the core of any organization. I will dwell on this a little later. So here the challenge is we used to plan earlier, say every month once or every quarter once. But as our pace of change has increased, the need for planning in a much shorter time bucket has increased. And now typically in every planning system plans at least once a week. So that is the kind of change. And what does this require? It requires a lot of data, which is either real-time data, which the ERP supplies, or near real-time data, because a lot of secondary or tertiary data you may not even be getting in real time. So it may be there is always a lag. So how do you get this? This is the first question which I want to develop on. The second is in terms of the supply network planning. So as Girija mentioned very rightly, our networks are evolving. In fact, for us in Borosil, for every 6 months to 1 year, we are reevaluating our network and saying, does this fulfill our customer needs? Because earlier, the business was only B2B. When I say B2B, we have a carton in and carton out of our warehouses. But increasingly, a good portion of the business is B2C, whether it is a Cloudtail vendor flex model or fulfilled by Amazon or it is our own brand store. So more shift is happening towards retail customers, and that is driving a big shift in terms of how the channel mix is changing. The third is, and this is an aspect which we often forget, is that how do we optimize the warehousing space and throughputs? Because we start with certain assumptions in the beginning of the year, and often either we are way above or we are way below. And this has been our experience over the last 2 years, saying that sometimes we are 30% above or we are 30% below. How do we dynamically readjust as we go forward? So I want to dwell upon these three. So coming to the first, when we look at the inventory planning process and systems, I want to give an example. It is like a classic feedback control system. In the sense, there is an input, there is a process, and the process can be a production process or a sales process or even an inventory process. And the output is the metrics that you want and the desired metrics. For example, fill rate can be a metric, stock aging can be a metric. You can have inventory turns can be a metric. So once you run a process and you have a metric which is an output, and you will check the actual output versus the planned output and what you desired in the first place. And there is an error signal in if I talk a bit of electrical engineering speak, and that feedback goes back, and then you again change the input so that you get the desired output. So this is to me one, it may be a bit of a crude example, but this is how we used to plan maybe 20 years, 25 years back, how our inventory planning systems work. And even now, I'm sure many organizations are planning, the core principle does not change. So here is an example where we are actually having a digital twin. There is a physical space and there is a conceptual space which we are simulating. And here maybe there are, as we get more and more data in real time, our ability to get a less and less error signal and move the input closer to the output improves. So this is an area which I see a straightforward application of the concept of the digital twin. The second is in terms of supply network simulation and optimization. So I have put up a slide which you can see. So on the left, okay, this is pertinent to Borosil. So this did a study about 2 years back saying, if I want to service any customer within 24 hours, what is the kind of supply network do I have? And it vastly differs from the supply network. So if you look at the big bubbles here, there is one around Mumbai, there is one around Calcutta, one around Delhi, and maybe one around Hyderabad. So these are the 3 or 4 warehouses that we have. But if I have to service my customers in one day, I need to have a very different network. And the challenge I have is I may not be able to afford the cost that it will entail. And I would need a digital twin to continuously evaluate whether this is, when do I change? Every 3 months, every 6 months. So this is something which what do you call is the thinking I have as to how do we apply the concept of digital twin to supply network simulation and optimization. The third is the warehouse throughput and space optimization. So here the key point is how do we, based on the real-time data, how do we predict the flow of inventory? Okay, and one important point I want to touch upon is we have a lot of data, but do we have enough clean data to do machine learning? Because any machine learning system is as good as the data we feed and tell it what actually happened in the past, what input led to what output, or what happened in the past. And with that, then we can do the simulation. But the key question is how clean is the data? How amenable is the data for a artificial intelligence or a machine learning modeling? And which kind of model will actually simulate what is happening in the real life? So I thought these are the 3 things I could think about. So if I sum up the areas that we want to explore in supply chain, I already mentioned the 3, which is one. So digital twins in the areas of planning, transportation, and warehousing. Second will be continuously evaluating our supply network planning. And third is how do we make the connection between the physical and the digital world more robust, more real time, and make it less lag prone. What this will lead to, I think there was Dr. Bhanumati mentioned earlier, there needs to be better cost. So we will have a better cost, improved availability and fill rates. And as we evolve in this area, the systems will run more in autopilot. Now you need to babysit each system. You need to monitor how is it working, whether it's working properly. I think while it will not go away in the short term, I think gradually we will move to more and more systems on digital twin model where they are in autopilot. And again, the question is how much clean data are we prepared to feed the system? So this becomes, I think, the differentiator between a good digital twin model and not so great model. But I'm humble and I want to say that at this point, I had mentioned to Dr. Girija earlier, I have more questions than answers. And I'm looking forward to learning from the esteemed panelists as to how I can take the concept and implement in my own organization. Okay. So that is from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Balaji. I didn't know you also were a fan of Rajnikant, so but very apt analogy, and I think you laid out some of the use cases very, very clearly. And in my experience, the ability to simulate quickly is a big differentiator that we've seen both user companies as well as service providers in this space leverage actively, because the low-hanging fruits on optimizations are all kind of taken, right? So unless and until you keep evaluating, right? There was a case we did recently where very, very large setup, and it historically has been block storage, and we kept reevaluating on what is the price point of steel at which it makes sense to go to a racked facility from a block storage. So again, you can't keep doing that unless until you have the robust backend, digital platforms. On that note, let me invite Mr. Rahul Begre. He is the Vice President Supply Chain Greater China Group for Zespri International. He's been with this organization for a while and has worked for almost 22 years. Spent 8 years in industrial product supply chain with Siemens, Philips, and spent time in Indian market. He's spent time also with SanDisk and Microsoft, so very diverse and strong technology footprint as well. And last 4 years in the fresh product supply chain. So different experiences, Rahul. How do you see these experiences, from different industry segments? What do you think, what's the need? How does it vary? And maybe some of the points that Balaji also talked about, right? What are the use cases that you see in your environment that are coming out?
Thank you. I think the underlying objective is more or less same, in different industries. Like, when we started experimenting this in 2016 in Microsoft, that was from a very manufacturing perspective, right? How do we develop a prototype in a digital twin without investing, in the infrastructure and still make it work and learn from that to actually when you have to put the physical infrastructure. So that was just one example in 2016 in Microsoft. But I get it gets more interesting in my current industry, which is traditionally not very technology savvy. The agriculture or horticulture has been a very labor intensive manual kind of industry. But obviously in New Zealand, we are headquarters in New Zealand. They have done enough research in last 30 years to be able to try some of these digital twin technologies in the horticulture supply chain. So I'll give you two examples on how we are, like Balaji said, I don't think we have answers, but at least we know the areas in which that can be applied. And as we build that data year by year, it gets obviously more effective. So the first area where we are trying to apply this is what we call a digital crop estimation. Now, obviously, in a developed country, finding labor is very challenging. And now, why this is important from a business perspective, right? Because as a kiwi fruit crop, we are talking about almost 7 billion kiwi fruits, right, that we ship to the world every year. Now, for me to predict how many billion kiwi fruits are going to be available in a given year, what is the size of that fruit, and what would be the quality of that fruit, right? Doing this stuff manually is just impossible, right? And we will never going to get it right. And that has significant business consequences because whole your marketing campaign, your supply chain infrastructure is based on a certain number. And if that is more volatile, it all fails down, or at least we end up spending a lot more money. So what does digital crop estimation do, right? So we have machines going through all of these fields, trying to capture almost 2000 frames per second pictures of how the fields are developing in terms of their density, how the fruit are changing their size, every 2 weeks. And that exercise carries out for almost 3 to 4 weeks. It's basically you are mapping a 3D version of your field and using that 3D version, trying to assess, okay, this is the likelihood of my crop estimate. So we've been trying to do it for last 2 years now. We started investing in 2020, 2021. We are still in a range of plus minus 50%. That is still significant, but it's moving in the right direction. Right? So that's one application. Second application, which is also, I think, what Balaji mentioned in terms of environment simulation. Right? So, with so much fruit and every year, the season, weather, soil, water, a lot of variables that are going into the fruit. Now, once we have that input on this is how the parameters are for this season, what is the right kind of environment for me to provide, whether this is in the ship, containers, when we store it in the markets, we need to simulate that environment so that we are reasonably confident that for this season, if I put the fruit in this environment, I am likely to reduce my fruit losses to, let's say, 3% or 2%. Right? So we are experimenting that. That's the second case study, if you will, is simulating the warehouse environment for a given season fruit and trying to come up with an assessment to say, how will the fruit quality if I keep the fruit in this environment for, let's say, next 6 months. And obviously, I think the savings, if you look at it from business impact, it significantly says this is a much more sustainable process. It saves a lot of human effort, which is scared, which is not so easily available in New Zealand. It's a lot more safe process because people don't have to go in the field and collect all of that data manually. And it brings a certain level of certainty to our prediction that we are doing. So yeah, those are the two case cases and the business benefit that we see, for this technology. Thank you.
Very apt examples, Rahul. And I must say the kiwi behind you does look quite juicy. In India, obviously, that's not a very common fruit. And, I used to travel back in my previous life in Southeast Asia. That used to be something almost always on the breakfast table and stuff. So great examples. And maybe, Sunil, let me pick the thread with you to kind of just continue the conversation, maybe put a nuance of, a technology company to this. Sunil is the director of ERP and SCM Cloud Competency at Oracle India. And he comes from a core manufacturing industry background, has been focusing on digital supply chain solution for various industries since the turn of the century. So a long, experience of seeing how digital has shifted over the years. He has been with Oracle for last almost 14 years and drives the SCM CRM competency, focusing on digital supply chain transformation customers around digital logistics, Industry 4.0, and so on and so forth. So Sunil, obviously, given your experience, you would have seen this evolve quite a bit, right? How it used to be, how it is now, how technology itself has shifted and made things easier compared to what they used to be. So maybe a little bit of your view on what's coming up, what's happening, how the ability to leverage a digital backbone is becoming possibly easier, and what are the maybe some of the new things that are there in the market that you can guide us a bit on. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, good morning, everyone. As during the brief introduction from Girija, I have seen this industry evolve over the last couple of decades. And see, what has happened is I heard this term digital twin a few years back, and I'm sure all of us would have heard it not more than maybe 5 years back. So I was just wondering, what is this all digital twin about? Is it something new, or it's been in there or been coined as a new term? So you can always blame consulting organizations and to some extent the IT organizations about coming up with new terminology. And that's how it has been. So a digital representation of an object, of an asset, of a system, of a process is what we call it as a digital twin, more for standard layman language. And it's been there. So, we have seen those, the systems being adopted by various organizations. Yes, it has evolved over a period of time. We have got those AI, machine learning, blockchain, IoT, cloud, or the latest enabling technologies which have made those applications much easier to go or to penetrate into the organization. But still, it has always been there. So what I'll do is I'll start with a few customer examples. We heard a very nice one from Rahul in terms of how kiwi fruits, what they're doing, even starting from the field level, going up to the entire distribution as well. So, I'll pick up 3 customer examples in India who have deployed digital twins based technology to improve their operational costs, to improve their efficiencies, to improve time to market. So I'll pick up 3 industries. So the largest footwear organization in India. So I'll not name them, but you can always Google and find out who is the largest in terms of volume in India. And we have all grown up wearing their shoes from school times. So, what they did was they started this because they were the largest in terms of volume anywhere in the world. In terms of all their subsidiaries spread across all the organization. By the way, when we were kids, we thought that's an Indian brand. Later on, we realized it was a company we started somewhere in Europe and then penetrated across the world. So they started this technology innovation or the digital innovation in their warehouses because the volumes were huge. There were optimization issues, there were labor productivity issues, there were issues with regard to accuracy of what shipments are going on, because every single pair of shoe is treated as a separate SKU. So what we helped them was creating a digital twin of all their warehousing facilities so that they could see what stock is lying where, going up to the individual SKU, and getting the real visibility of each and every inventory SKU, and making sure that the picking happens at the right time by the right person using the right equipment, and thereby increasing the throughput by almost double. So you can again Google search and look at their case study. It's published under Oracle's on our website. So you can see how they have improved their productivity using that digital twin technology. So we used to call it as a warehouse management. Now we say that warehouse management enabled by digital twins, enabled by AI, machine learning. So that's how the terminology has changed. So we have started leveraging technology in a better way, but that's how the customer improved their productivity, improved their time to reach the market, improved their efficiency level. I'll quickly switch over to another interesting organization. Again, another leader in paint industry. You would all know whom I am talking about, the #1 paint company in India. So, for them, the critical issue was around time to market, because they had a time window of 2 hours to 4 hours of the time a customer walks in and places an order. Because for me as a customer, it doesn't really matter whether I am painting my house, because the labor is sitting in my house or in my plant to do a paint job. So it doesn't matter if I order paint of variant A or B. I want that order to be delivered within those 4 hours window. So that's how it was very critical for them to make sure the tertiary distribution, which is from their the stockist location to the end retailer, that is serviced within 4 hours. So what they did was, so the entire planning across all their about 140 to 150 locations across the country happens on a single system, where they simulate all the orders which are coming in from the central repository or central call center, and getting into their ERP and flowing into the overall planning system, wherein you come to know, wherein you can plan and say that what item will go in which vehicle. So they would use even the small tempos or the auto rickshaws also at times, and they are all fitted with those GPS devices. And the moment it moves, so you can track those vehicles, and the information is going to the retailer that this is when the vehicle is going to reach. So by creating a digital twin of all their assets, they are monitoring the movement of all their goods which are being shipped out. They are monitoring each and every exception which is happening, and making sure that the delivery happens within those service levels. For them, the service level was very, very critical. So using this technology, they have been able to achieve the service levels which is as much as close to 100%. So this is what has happened over the last few years. I'll quickly switch to another leading the company in FMCG space, another industry, so you would know, which is the #1 FMCG company in the country. So when the pandemic hit, so the volume suddenly grew. So they had again deployed a digital twin based technology for their organizations. But when the volume grew more than 100% of what they had budgeted for, they could really turn it around, make sure that the volumes are fitting into the available capacity of trucks, and could ship it out on time to reach the customers. So when everyone was queuing up to the nearby Kiryana store or the retail outlets, or ordering online from various grocery stores, so all those stocks were reaching there thanks to the technology which was supporting those kind of huge intakes in terms of the demand which was happening from the market. So these were some of the few examples that we have seen. I'll maybe later on we can touch upon some production related, some maintenance related use cases, but I leave it for later. Over to you, Girija.
And maybe what's happening new, what's the latest in the
Okay.
game?
So, I'll give you, let me just open one screen. I'll just share this. Can you just see this?
Yeah.
So, what is happening is we are seeing a lot of organizations using digital twin based technology in terms of being able to design the product, being able to install the product, and while installing, you're making sure that even somebody, a worker sitting remotely, is able to guide the guys who are doing that particular installations. And even before that, even some field trials have to be done. That's also happening using this digital twin. Any service related issue, any say a particular bearing, the temperature is going up. So you are keeping complete monitoring of all the parameters, whether it's for a particular machine or a set of machines, and going up to each and every part of that machine, which is very critical for the upkeep and operation of that particular equipment. So by doing that, you are making sure that any alert based on any anomaly which is detected, or any pattern which is not normal that gets detected, the alert goes in. And at times what happens is you can proactively detect that because the temperature of a particular bearing has gone up, and hence you would predict that this particular motor or that part of the equipment is going to go down, that is going to fail. So the system can alert in such a way that you can order for those spare parts. You can make sure that the service guy is available either remotely, who is doing that diagnostic remotely using that digital twin technology, and helping the people sitting on that particular shop floor do either the troubleshooting and even the repair of that particular equipment. So all that is I'm going to say is that this is all because of that AI machine learning capabilities which are there, which helps in doing that, predicting it proactively, and doing all those maintenance stuff remotely. That's how, this is what we are seeing a lot of progress which is happening in this space, which is help companies improve the productivity, which help companies improve the mean time between failures and all. So that's thanks to this technology, which is helping a lot of organizations.
No, very interesting, Sunil. And I must say, I've done some work in the predictive maintenance space almost 16, 17 years ago. And the challenge obviously used to be to get adequate amount of data sets to make the necessary prediction, because you can't do line series over there, and a certain amount of environmental factor, usage factors, etc., make the predictability of maintenance a lot more difficult, which is where with the help of an ability to create a machine learning algorithm, you can make that window or the gap much better. The other that you talked about, the example of the shoe company having the inventory visibility, is actually also very close to my heart, because particularly with the B2B and a B2C setup now, with omnichannel being a key focus for a large number of consumer-oriented organizations, the ability to make sure that you get inventory visibility across the channel, across your warehouses, and then take the right decision on what's the fulfillment strategy on a given day, it's quite critical. And we've seen organizations shave a significant amount of their operating cost by being able to create that kind of a visibility. So very, very lovely examples. Yihan, let me maybe come over to Singapore and get your perspective on the whole conversation so far we've been having. Again, yours is a broader multi-industry experience. Yihan is Director Corporate Strategy and Head Computer Vision at Accent Solutions. Yang has spent most of his time in IoT, and his firm helps client provide visibility and track assets across supply chain. So very apt area, Yang, and I think you've been doing a lot of work in creating products in this space as well. So please tell us about
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, thanks, Girija, for the kind introduction. And I mean, it's lovely to hear all the different participants or panelists sharing their views on the industry and so on. So, like I've been in industry, I mean, my firm provides like IoT, meaning that Internet of Things, meaning that we have sensors on the ground, and we have a platform for users to input or to see things happening on the ground. And we track things, from containers to the pallets in it, to even the items in it. We have tracked individual fruits, apples, avocados, even durians from Thailand to China as well. And at the end of the day, I mean, we provide different sort of technology. We can use like passive tags for RFID up to active tags, Bluetooth, all the way to GPS devices. We even create our own proprietary devices to achieve different objectives, to track different things in the supply chain. And of course, and when I first started, I mean, we don't have this term called a digital twin, or rather the digital twin has just started. The first I heard of this term was in 2018. So before that, it was more like, oh, can I track this? Can I understand that? Can I find out what's happening on the ground? And no one really talks about digital twinning until around 2018, when that concept becomes more popular or more sexy, whereby you want to understand different things happening, for example, in a warehouse. I want to understand the different facets, real-time environmental conditions, or things that are happening, things that are moving in the warehouse. And you say, oh, I have a digital twin and I can understand things, real time. So for us, maybe I can just talk about some of the use cases, why people require digital twinning or understand what's happening on the ground. So today we help even governments like track so-called containers, particularly customs authorities. We serve about 8 global customs authorities around the world today. They want to understand those bonded containers moving from ports to places like inland container depots, whether they have been touched, whether there's any pilferage. So we have a security device where we place that we can lock the container. Anything happens to it, they give a security alert, and we also provide real-time GPS location of the containers. And this has helped quite a number of customs authorities around the world monitor. And before that, they used to have a human escorting each and every one of these containers. Well, now the device, you can monitor, the entire supply chain, or the movement of the containers, sometimes across hundreds of kilometers, just from a command center, right? And we also help, even the retail industry, we tag each and every one of their products, like bedsheet, linen. We monitor we track the inventory from the warehouse all the way to the department stores, their outlets. We help them understand, what's the inventory in their stores. And also, in certain cases, consignment counters in the department stores, when things are being taken and moved around, they don't really they might not know what has been bought, because the reconciliation with the POS system happens not too often, maybe sometimes once a week, once a month. And we help them to understand their inventory real time, which enable them to replenish their goods real time. We're also helping some of the petroleum companies, authorities track their so-called oil tankers on the road. They call those bulk road tankers. If there's any pilferage, especially in some of the developing countries, pilferage happens quite often. Immediately if someone opens, the valve in the tanks. And we also help some of the commodity traders, or even their financiers, understand what's happening in the warehouse. So today, other than tracking things on the road, we also track things in a warehouse. And in a warehouse, when we have a lot of pallets with commodities, these are bulk storage warehouses. It's difficult to track using conventional sensors. So now we use cameras with proprietary tracking technology to be able to track movement of pallets across the warehouse by just looking at them. And we also understand the content of the cargo when it has been brought into the warehouse. So we use like cutting edge technology, like, depth sensors to understand the volumetric, composition of the pallet. So if a pallet comes in, we can tell, like, what's the volume of the pallet. So if the warehouse operator tells you that, it has 25 bags on it, and that's the weight, and, the weight sensor is on the weighing, the weighing scale. So everything goes to the platform, real time, and we can cross check immediately, did the person, key in wrongly? Are there really 25 bags of cargo on the warehouse using all these technologies? We track them in the warehouse. And for some of the clients, like financiers, if they want to finance things in a warehouse, and this will help them to ascertain whether what's being said in a warehouse is really in a warehouse. So these are more of the, I would call them like real-time. These customers, they want a real-time understanding of what's happening in the warehouse or in the supply chain. And we do have another group of customers that just want to collect data. So we have done so-called digital twinning, or we put sensors in things like elevators. We understand, real time, what's happening, which floor the elevator is at. Did the door open or close? Is the elevator level with the ground, and so on and so forth. And is there any abnormal jerkiness and so on when the lift is moving, right? So this will help collect data and tell you when there's something is going to happen, something is not right. Maybe some of the ball bearings or the wire rope is not working too well, that cause abnormal jerkiness at some areas. And this has really sort of reduced operational costs, because when technicians go to the lift to service a fault, they typically might not know. Even if you run the lift, some tests, on the lift, you might not know exactly where the fault is, because someone complained and you just come and you try to service and nothing is wrong. And the next day, the consumer takes the lift, or rather the elevator, and hey, it's not working too well. And by collection of all this data, at the end of the day, we can say that, when certain things happen, then it can constitute that there's a high probability that there's going to be a fault. And that's where the predictive nature of using data with your ML and your AI comes in. But of course, we went through a very long time of data collection and establishing a baseline. And of course, involving some of the, what Balaji has mentioned, cleaning up the data, making sure that the data is good, and so on. And before we start to be able to have all these abilities. Yeah. So we have done quite a number of things across multiple verticals, primarily in supply chain, and most of them started with real time, and they want to solve a problem with a real time understanding of what's happening on the ground. But lately, we started to see more and more people, trying to do like data collection so that they can do more things with it. Financing, they want to do like predictive stuff and so on. Yeah. So this is how I see the industry, how our clients have been evolving across the years. Yeah.
That's fascinating, Johan, I must say. And clearly, we've seen, as we are a operating organization, and we've seen it in our own case when we operate for clients on their behalf, on their systems or our systems, the visibility of supply chain becomes the absolute baseline if you really want to drive any sustainable optimization, right? We did about 5 years ago one of the leading control towers in the industry, and after we did the control tower, we started asking ourselves as to what does it do, right? Because you can tell where your vehicle is, but what good it is if it doesn't help me take the right decision. And we started to completely turn the whole conversation to say, visibility is for a purpose, that visibility helps me drive decision. So it becomes from a visibility tool to a decision support system that allows you to take a lot more proactive decisions. So our story on the control tower is not that we will get you visibility of your vehicles or things like that. Our story is that I'll help you ensure that your line feeding, which is on a JIT or GIST basis, will not get impacted because any potential delay will be known upfront, and therefore preventive actions can be taken rather than reactively knowing about a fault when it happened, how it happened, so forth. So very fascinating experience. Maybe let me just change the track a little bit and maybe Balaji, hear from you a little bit from what we've talked about it, but let's say a little bit on the how part of it. What do you think is needed? You are a fast growing organization, and we know how difficult it is to stay abreast with the day to day. So what do you think organization needs to have from a people, process, technology component of it, the whole gamut, to make sure that you stay abreast with the technology, keep experimenting, learning, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, thanks, Girija. So I think that is a very, I think it's a very powerful framework what you referred, people, process, technology. If I look at my own organization, okay, what we require is, it is like this. When say you go back, say 30, 40 years, when mainframes were there, and we had an EDP department where you give a request and you get the data. Okay, so even I have not experienced it. It is before my time. I'm sure none of you experienced it. But just building on that analogy, I think we have a client service relationship in all our when we work with our IT departments, or when we work with, and it has become more and more collaborative over the years. I think the change now is the frontline customer supply chain or frontline supply chain people themselves would need more and more technological orientation to start getting these benefits. Is I think one big change that I'm seeing. Like, for example, if I have to select, I will give you an example. We are looking at a transport management system, which actually is a very good example of a digital twin, because it tracks where the trucks are. And I think you mentioned a control tower, so similar to a control tower. But to leverage this particular TMS, we require a lot of in-house expertise in terms of functional expertise, and also some amount of IT expertise to connect to these systems and implement it. So I think more and more IT savviness of the supply chain team is what is something that is very important. And the second is looking at what others have done. I think Sunil alluded to 3 examples of 3 leading organizations doing a lot of changes. So learning from those examples, and maybe a platform of CIA would be very useful for that. Seeing what others are doing, and then trying not to reinvent the wheel. We can just copy and paste that particular thing which is working well, and it is a great example of what people have done. So I think this is the second thing that learning across. I think I don't want to invent everything. I want to copy paste faster. I would move much faster, actually. So this is the second thing, and I'm sure there are CIA forums like CIA and other industry experts who can help us with the second thing. And the third is continuously calibrating and seeing every quarter or every half year how we have moved on the technology scale, because as an organization, our motto is to become a very customer-centric organization. And if I look at what Amazon has done and what say Jeff Bezos has done, so incorporating that as your central philosophy and then driving everything. And last but not the least, finally, whatever you do is a business decision. Okay, so there needs to be a IRR or a ROCE metric to it. You don't do technology for the sake of technology and for the sake of getting some kick saying that I implemented the latest technology. I think so. This will underpin all our thinking, saying what returns we get or what customer satisfaction improvement this will drive, and that is a framework I would work upon in Borosi.
Very rightly said, Balaji. There has to be ROI. There has to be a business case to everything we do, and that's what drives adoption. Otherwise, it becomes a initiative, a POC that never scales. Rahul, maybe you can throw a little bit of light from the cultural standpoint, right? This is also a little bit of change management on. I remember long ago we were advising an automotive organization that was trying to reduce the PD cycle from 48 months to about a 2-year kind of time frame, and there were enough proof points outside of that domain that it was very evident it can be done. But there was so much resistance that no, it can't be done in India. It can't be done in our setup. We know how difficult it is to do these mock-ups and stuff like that. You worked across geographies, right? So what's your perspective on the change management, the cultural aspect of it?
No, I think that's one significant difference that I see, just from a Chinese culture point of view, that it is never a short-term view, right? And Balaji mentioned about ROIs and all, and it's very surprising. I mean, these metrics doesn't come into the top 5 metrics for them. For them, the primary objective is to how do I scale it fast? How do I get my market share? And then I worry about my ROI. Also, the ecosystem in a way supports that, because there's a significant government resource allocation, both from financials, from physical infrastructure, right? That allows you to not worry about ROIs in the short term. We recently, just last week, we were talking to Unilever and Heineken, AB InBev, right? So the big organizations are now coming with what they call is the excavator programs, right? Where some of that IT stuff that you don't have to do yourself, you have to leverage the broader ecosystem where people have a niche expertise in a very small area. But I am making sure that I am connecting to all of those ecosystem partners and leveraging what they are doing, offering what I can do better, and collectively coming up, with a product. But the earlier point that you mentioned, I mean, what is that? How should we look at it? I think, especially in my industry, where it's very fragmented nature of the industry, right? Where you have a lot of people owning few acres to 10 acres to 2 acres. How do we get people to buy in this idea that this is something beneficial in long term for the industry as a whole, right? So selling, creating that business case, and again, not a business case from an immediate perspective, but a long-term perspective. So that's the key, from my industry, having that shared vision and alliances across the industry stakeholders. How do I make sure that people are willing to share knowledge between what they are learning, in their farms and willing to share? So overall, it benefits the brand. Third, obviously in this industry, there's a lot of regulatory aspect, food safety aspect, right? How do I create that stakeholder engagement where they are also encouraging these initiatives? I think the ROI point was actually the one where it's very interesting when we talk about this experimentation, because none of this, what we're going to experiment in this field, is going to give you a result in next 2-3 years. And that actually reminds me the Bill Gates quote, right? That generally people end up overestimating what will happen in next 2 years and underestimate what will happen in next 10 years, right? So as a part of my resource allocation, as a part of my investment allocation, how do I allocate a certain amount of budget which are probably never going to yield into any results in next 5 years, but there is a light at maybe the longer horizon in 10 years, right? So adopting that practice, as a management, also goes a long way in terms of developing some of these initiatives.
Oh, very rightly said. I think you're right. Yeah, absolutely. The balancing act has to be there. Otherwise, every decision can't be completely on a ROI basis, and you wouldn't do innovation if you were to do that. So some amount of ability to create innovation, create proof points, and then find ways to scale is very, very critical.
So just to broaden that point, and that's what I learned from the Unilever innovation excavator model, where when they are allocating resources in some of their initiatives, they have what called a 3-stage process, right? Where it's just an experiment for first 3 years, it becomes a prototype, maybe another 2 years. And they have different metrics, for these stages, right? So the ROI only comes in the last phase, where we have seen a certain threshold of sell in the market, and then you talk about business. But whether in terms of customer stickiness, those of the, I mean, these are new metrics, in a traditional sense. Those are the metrics which matter more for these initiatives, in the short term.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sunil, maybe you can comment on, when you talk to your customers, your peer group, see, there's a lot of choices, right? And then we talked about, I think, and then I don't know how much of audience appreciated the point. We talked about digital backbone on planning side. We talked about digital backbone on operating side, on diagnostic side, maintenance and repairs. So there's a full gamut of it, right? And as Rahul also is highlighting, you've got to go experiment, but there's also obviously always a capital allocation issue, right? How much you will put, where you would put in, right? So what do you think, in your opinion, what typically organization should look at in terms of the allocation criterion? Where is it that you want to focus on, here and now, building for future, designing activity or operating activity, or things like that?
Yeah. Okay. So, we have been talking to a lot of customers and we have seen different buying processes. And, something has really changed, which is pandemic. Because if we see before pandemic to after pandemic, the decision buying or the decision making cycles have really been shortened. Earlier, there used to be a lot of resistance to change. Why invest now? Why not do it later? Why not defer it? Unless there is a fire, why should I get into any digital transformation initiative? So unless there is a burning need. But now we are seeing the adoption of technology or reception to any new ideas or any new innovative stuff is much more there, because they have seen without the digital backbone in place, it's very difficult to sustain. It's very difficult to be having a resilient supply chain or the resilient operations. So, that's where it is. So earlier there used to be the commitment from the top is very, very critical. So any initiative, we have seen few initiatives within the same organization. In fact, same initiative in the organization not doing well because the top was not really owning it. Because at times you think that a technology provider will come or somebody will do a transformation and things will change. That doesn't happen unless there is an ownership, unless you drive that initiative, and more often than not, it has to be driven from the top. Unless they own it, they have a complete sense of ownership from their side, things will not improve. So we have seen organizations who, apart from looking at what is the ROI, what are the business benefits in terms of either improving their top line or improving their bottom line, they also look at how do they improve my operations, how it will become, the life of my operator will become much more easier by you adopting some of those technologies. So they look at all those areas and then take that kind of decision and then kind of own it. And we have seen those organizations, once they had a business owner who started owning it, owning the deliverables, owning the results, owning the KPIs or outcomes, everything was their ownership. And then the vendor who is coming in, either a solution provider like Oracle or an implementation partner, so they are treated as the partner in the overall success. So once that happens, we have seen the success to be very much there. And now we are seeing those, as I said, buying cycles to be much more shortened, because the organizations have realized across multiple industries that there is no survival unless we adopt technology, unless we adopt technology, not for the sake of having a technology in place, but something which is delivering value, what is giving me business benefits, which is making the life simpler and making my overall operations much more resilient to any untoward incident that might happen. So that's where we are seeing a lot of initiatives which were kind of either on the back burner or they were on a cold storage. They have suddenly become so much active, and a lot of initiatives which are going at a slower pace, they have really improved, and we are seeing a lot of go lives, a lot of business case studies coming out from the customer's mouth. So that's really heartening change that we are seeing more from the technology or the digital initiatives perspective.
Oh, very, very right. And I think the whole business ownership part of it is a age-old golden statement. I'm sure you would have seen in your own initial days. I remember when first one of the initial SAP implementations that we did. The entire management, including the owner promoters, spent full day because it was not just implementation of a transaction system, but changing the way the company runs, and therefore it requires obviously a very strong ownership and drive. That goes absolutely without saying. Uh, Yang, maybe let me maybe just get your view a little bit on again the cultural and the enabling aspects of what is it that we need to do. See, you've done a lot of work in product development itself, right? And that's a very different ball game where most of us will use an existing solution, tweak it to our needs, customize it. But conceptualizing something ab initio, right, requires a lot of thinking through on, what is it that we need to, focus on, where we go after, what kind of an organizational setup is needed, right, to say, look, here is the kind of design thinking, quote unquote, that we will have to go about, right?
Yeah. So product development, I mean, while I'm very much focused on developing products, I didn't start out that way. I started out on the business front. I was doing business development. I was meeting customers. I was getting myself deep into the domains, the different verticals, from supply chain, all the way from petroleum to containers, the regular logistics, to even the agri part of the supply chain and so on. So with an understanding of all these things, and you get a better understanding of what customers' pain points are, and more importantly, their willingness to public their money on a new technology, right? In fact, a lot of the things that Rahul has mentioned on his experiences with Unilever, the excavator part, rings a bell. I mean, or rather struck a chord in my heart. Because you have customers always, coming in not knowing what they really want, right? Some might be looking for a solution to an immediate problem. Some might be wanting to do things like what I think Sunil has mentioned, right? I want to try this thing out because my competitor is using something like that, but they do not really know what they really want to do, right? And some might be, like in the case of Unilever, maybe they have like a longer term goal, right? And they have set like clear metrics on, initially I want to do this, I want to do that, and so on. So when you develop product, at the end of the day, you have to bear in mind at the end, what is your customer segment, what pain points are you trying to solve, what stages are your different customers in, and therefore you can start to map out your investment. And because product development, I mean, it can range from, depending on what kind of product you're building, it can range from 1 year to 10 years. I mean, today, like you look at Tesla, I mean, they have 10 years with, trying to figure out how to build a car. You have like great companies like Palantir. They have been there since like the early 2000s, and only, in the past couple of years, they have, really expanded greatly and scaled. So I think at the end, from a product development perspective, you really have to understand what problem you're trying to solve. And these are not cast in stone. These will evolve along the way. And as you develop the products, if you start to try and test out some of the ideas, some of the beta versions, some of the MVPs with customers, hopefully paying customers, because when customers are willing to part with their money to try something out with you, it means that there's value in what you're producing, right? And of course, at the end of the day, it's a lot on gut feel and how you view the industry. What do you think the industry is heading? Whether you think what you're building has value. Yeah.
No, absolutely right. Yeah. No, I think you've summed it quite aptly. You've got to be very, very clear on what's the problem you're trying to solve, and then work from there. Otherwise, you tend to, try to be a one-size-fits-all for a very wide variety of needs, and then that doesn't quite work. And in fact, if I may add a little bit of my own perspective to the whole digital adoption, storyboarding of it. One of the things I've seen, I've spent almost a decade in last 10 odd years in my previous life advising clients on what to do, how to go about it. And what we realized is, if you lay out a sort of, let's say, a vision, and you lay out a point of arrival, right? We used to do these, what we used to call digital reinvention, reimagination workshops. And you take that particular domain, whether it could be a functional cut to it, or it could be a business segment cut to it, it could even be a geographical cut to it. But you say, hey, in this particular part of business, let's say take supply chain, or let's say even part of it, just the supply chain planning, what is it that I can get to? What is my point of arrival? Right? If I can make this happen, and this happen, right, my life will become easier. My cycle time could get shorter. My accuracy could improve. My customer would be happier. And then you lay out what is needed to enable that, right? So if we take planning as an example, right, how, and planning is a very classical case, Balaji would know well. It's not just the technology, it's also people, it's also process, right? It's also laying out the entire organizational behavior, and people who are not used to doing planning in a systematic manner, it's a very, very hard shift, right? Very, very difficult to make that kind of changeover, right? And laying that vision out, and then calling out the enablers, not just to say I need this tech or I need this kind of an integration point, but also laying out what is the organizational structure or operating model design change that I need to incorporate. That becomes absolutely critical, because then you are not just like I think Rahul talked a little bit about doing experimentation and doing innovation. So that becomes a little bottom up. But when you're looking at it, that look, here's the problem I'm trying to solve, right? And you lay out the vision, you lay out the ingredients, the enabling factors. It is extremely helpful, because it gets the shared goals, gets the organization clarity on who needs to do what's the kind of investments needed, what kind of process changes may be required that are probably not what is known in psychology is the second order effect, right? So not just looking at the first order, which is the immediacy part of it, but the second order, understanding the impact and making sure that change therefore becomes durable, and you draw the requisite benefit out of it, right? Maybe, and when Balaji, you can just pick the thread from there and give a little bit of your own perspective of driving that change internally in your organization. I'm sure you'd have done such projects as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Girish. I think it was a good perspective from your side. So I think the internal challenges, frankly, have in my view diluted over the years. So in fact, now the what do you call, the demand, if I so say, right from our CEO to everyone, is that bring more digital, bring more tech. So I think it is just to me, it is like finding the right and appropriate technology at the right price point for us, and take 2 or 3 burning issues that we have right now, and then go ahead and implement it. So I think the challenge is in terms of how much time and effort you will put in implementing, what quality resources you will deploy. Because if I look at my team, we are all having what do you call, all my me and my team are having a lot of strenuous day jobs and a lot of demanding operational work. So but if you bring in somebody who will do it as a project, so I don't think they will understand the day-to-day operations. So I think I think we need to get into a virtuous cycle where we automate more operations and go more on the digital side, and freeing up the time of the key resources so that they can drive this initiative as we go. I think that is my perspective. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Balaji. And I see that another of our panelists, Mr. Yoshihiro Kaiga, has joined in. Good afternoon, Kaiga-san. You've, I think, missed a very exciting part of the session. Probably you can, review some of the clippings, etc. later on. But we spent quite a bit of time talking about what digital twin entails for different industries, both practitioners as well as user organizations. Maybe I can just request a bit of your standpoint coming from the experience you have. To the audience, Mr. Yoshihiro Kaiga is the partner at McKinsey's Japan office. He brings deep experience in leading performance improvement in manufacturing and logistics industries through comprehensive digital transformation with extensive knowledge in manufacturing supply chain function. He's also worked with Normal Research Institute as a consultant. Over to you, Yoshida-san.
Thanks, Dirija-san. Thank you very much for the generous introduction. So, hello everyone. I'm Yoshihiro, partner at Tokyo office at McKinsey, and I'm really great to be here to share some of the thoughts around digital twin, optimizing the supply chain, leveraging the digital twin. So let me spend another like 15 to 20 minutes to share some thoughts on this topic so that it can be a little bit helpful for everyone. That's what I hope. So could you share the presentation? Yeah, thank you. So could you go to the page 2? Right, thank you. So I have 4 agendas today. One is the brief introduction about the digital twin optimization in supply chain. I assume everyone has already talked about this, so let me be brief. And the next one is a little bit more concrete topic. So site level digital twin, and the third one is network level. And lastly, it's a little bit kind of working mode, like how long it will take to implement digital twin. Those will be what I'm covering. So please go to the next page. So I think you've already heard so many times, but why digital twin now? Because, well, it's quite simple, right? Digital twin is one of the most powerful tools to do the simulation for optimizing supply chain. And honestly, it's not only about supply chain. You can leverage this for any other functions, but for this time, let's focus on supply chain. So digital twin is kind of creating the virtual reality in a way so that you can change all the factors to optimize your performance level without changing the reality. That's the beauty of digital twin. And then within the supply chain, of course, there are a lot of use cases. Maybe you can talk about maintenance, site production, and scheduling, end-to-end supply chain planning, and also network footprint optimization. I will explain a little bit later. And on top, distribution-related topics such as transportation and warehousing. Those elements, we can leverage digital twin to make your productivity even higher right now. Please go to the next page. When we are talking about the supply chain, it includes many elements. By people, the definition itself is different. But typically, we have 4 elements. One is forecasting and demand planning. Second one is supply planning and S&OP, and lastly, network and distribution planning. That's what we will be covering when we are talking about supply chain. And within those areas, we believe there are 3 different layers. One is strategic layers. Second one is tactical. Last one is operational, day-to-day operations. And in each area, we can fully leverage the new technologies to make supply chain to the next level. So today's topic is about digital twin, but even before, for example, for forecasting, we can leverage machine learning so that we have better forecasting accuracy, and also dynamic segmentation. And so after, we are talking about digital twin, focusing on network optimization and also scheduling optimization. For distribution planning, another big topic is advanced analytics for route optimization. This is one of the hottest topics in Japan right now, because many companies are struggling from the lack of drivers. So they need to find a way to build a sustainable supply chain network. That's why they are also keen to understand digital twin network optimization and scheduling optimization. Now, one typical mistake here is some companies are focusing only on strategic levers while they are not doing anything about operational. Or some other companies are doing the opposite. We really need to keep the good balance among those 3 different layers so that your supply chain can be really effective from all the three aspects. Please go to the next page. And as I mentioned, digital twin can be leveraged for mainly for network optimization and also the scheduling optimization. And to do so, we have three different layers. One is network level. So you can talk about the global supply chain network. And then the next layer is site level, and last layer is very detailed, but the production line level. We typically start the optimization from the production line level. And then after that, we are doing site level and lastly network level because it takes longer to make it happen. So in reality, we are doing it in parallel, but the first you want to optimize the production line level. Please go to the next page. And then, well, this is a little conceptual, so let me be brief. But so originally and historically, we are of course doing the supply chain planning optimization using the kind of traditional rule-based modeling, and which is also helpful. And then still, many companies can be getting the benefit from this model. And then in our cases, it will be contributing to 80% optimization. But if you can fully leverage digital twin, it could be 95 to 98% optimization level can be achieved because this is not a rule-based, and then you can fully leverage machine learning and advanced analytics technique so that you can fine-tune in a way the model so that you can find the best answer within the several trials. Please go to the next page. So let me be a little bit more concrete what we can do through the digital twin. This time I'm bringing the examples from the pharma industries, but of course it doesn't need to be limited within pharma industry. So in pharma industry, there are a typical impact on the right-hand side. So for example, if you're doing the production capacity maximization, you can do it around like 20% of the production capacity increase. That's also huge, right? And in the pharma industry, we tend to have some bottleneck in the QC, quality control lab. And then if we're optimizing the scheduling there, up to 40%, we can further increase the productivity. This will not about the cost reduction. It's more about free up the key capacity so that you can do better business without trying to find a new talent and then develop them from the scratch. Those will be the potential impact you can cultivate by leveraging the digital twin. Please go to the next page. And why digital twin is so powerful? We believe there are three elements, and then we should be covering those three elements when we are doing the digital twin. The first is, as I mentioned, digital twin is a simulation tool. And then the beauty of digital twin is you can do the simulation in close to real life conditions. So you can consider a lot of elements in real life and then considering it in the model so that your answer will be really kind of pragmatic, and also you can implement it based on the answers from the simulation. It's linking to that point, and this will help you not to use the black box effect. Even if you find the answer, if you don't know the logic behind, of course, it's very risky. If you make one mistake, you will be having a huge negative impact. That's the risks when we are running the models. But the digital twin can trace all the elements so that you can understand it, why you are having these answers, not that answers, right? And lastly, and very importantly, digital twin will be helping you to visualize the simulation results. For example, if you are optimizing the layout of the warehouse, and you'll be getting the first answer from the model, but you may be able to tell that, no, maybe this should be changing, this layout should be changing, and then you can actually change it, and then you'll be getting the result if it makes your productivity better or worse. So these trials will help you to create a better answer and also the realistic answers. So you can use number 1, 2, 3, and then doing the cycle, and in the end, you are having the very good answers to optimize your network or the scheduling before actually implementing it. Please go to the next page. So let me talk a little bit more about the site level digital twin, what you can do. The next page, please. So sorry to show the very messy page, but I want to share that how messy it would be in reality. There are so many variables within the supply chain, even in the site level. You are having a demand from the market on the left-hand side, and the right-hand side, you have, of course, your capacity. In this case, maybe the QC labs can be the bottleneck, for example. So you need to optimize based on the global demand and then QC labs capacity. To do so, there are so many elements you need to consider. And let's say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we needed to do it via the Excel model, or maybe like a SAP would help, but then not really helping you to coming up with a better solution, better answers. That was very difficult job for the planners. But right now, luckily, we have a lot of advanced solutions. And one of them is digital twin. And let me talk a little bit more about in an easier chart. Please go to the next page. So this is what we've done in the past, and then a little bit a simplified one. So on the right-hand side, we have the kind of model of the network. So you have API, and also after that, API will be coming into the site. And we are creating bulk first. And after that, in the pharma industry, they need to do the quality check so that you can go to the next phase, the packaging. And let's assume we have, for the area 1, 19 equipment, 50 SKUs. And after, we will be checking all the bulk at the quality lab. And then there's some like capacity restrictions. And after that, we are having 9 equipment and creating 400 SKUs. And if you need to optimize this based on the Excel model or the traditional a little bit advanced tool, it is nightmare. And we need to find the solutions to do this a little bit quicker and easier. And in this sense, the scheduling optimizer, which is using the digital twin, would really help. So this will be considering the market demand and the personal availability and the production problems. And at the same time, we want to optimize the result, right? And then results can be deferred by your objectives. For example, if you want to maximize the output volume, or you want to maximize the profitability, or you want to minimize potential lost sales, and so on and so forth, and then you can input that. And then this will be helping you to come up with the best potential solutions. That's what digital twin can do. And please go to the next page. So towards the objective of your business, so they can it can optimize the production and also scheduling. And there are several dimensions that can be achieved by scheduling optimization. For example, most high financial impact tend to come from the number of the outputs. So in this case, this is talking about the pharma industry. So number of bill starts can be increased. That's the first part. And also, for example, in this industry, service level is really important. And you cannot get too much lost sales. So you need to optimize or minimize the lost sales. So this can be also happening. And then sometimes you may be having limited capacity in terms of the people, and then you can reduce the workload for them by automating most of the processes so that they can focus only on the process they really need to focus on. Those could be the output from the digital twin. And next page, please. So, as I mentioned, many companies having a different set of objectives. So in this case, we are showing the kind of sample example. We did 3 types of simulation to optimize the business value and then also the product potential lost sales optimization. Based on those different scenarios, we are coming up with the different results. For example, business value driven case will be maximizing the revenue and also on-time delivery, while to minimize the potential lost sales, we will be having a limited upside for sales, but we are definitely losing the potential lost sales. So these will be the business objective criteria you need to decide as the board members, and after we can maximize the model to align with what you want to achieve. Next page, please. So we were covering the site level digital twin, and from now on, let me talk about a little bit of the network level digital twin. Let me be brief. So there are so many different potential outputs you can get based on the network level digital twin. And I will be sharing the more concrete examples later pages. So please go to the page 17. Let me share the real examples which I've done recently in Japan. So this is the case from the manufacturing companies in Japan. The revenue is around like a 5 billion USD. And they have 15 distribution centers in Japan. And they were struggling because of the increasing logistics costs. So they want to re-optimize the network. That was the key purpose of this exercise. And next page, please. To answer that, we've created 4 scenarios. One is the base case scenario, as is, which is the case A. The second one is the very minor changes, just to add 2 or 3 potential new distribution centers. And the third one is a drastic one, to reduce to only 2 distribution centers so that they can maximize the productivity. And the last one is the opposite, to have more mid-sized distribution centers in Japan so that they can be more agile and also minimize the cost. These are the initial hypotheses we've come up with the clients. And based on that, we've run the analysis, and which is on the next page. So this is the result. So as it can show, if you are not doing too many things, as the case A, it's the base case scenario in a way, and then we can only reduce the 3% point of the cost. While if you are taking the case C and D, you can reduce the 7 to 9% of the supply chain cost. So this is what the digital twin can do, and we have a lot of back analysis. And in the end, clients decided to go for the case B, which is adding the 2 distribution centers. And after, they are chasing for the case D, which is having around 20 to 30 distribution centers in Japan, meaning increasing by 10 DCs. While case C is also attractive in terms of cost reduction, so to reduce the number of DCs into 2, but at the same time, they were really considering about the supply chain resilience. In Japan, we have a lot of earthquakes. So if you are consolidating too much for 2 areas, it will be super risky. This is not what we can cover from the digital twin. And this is what we need to discuss after we get the results from the digital twin. So one kind of notion will be, first of all, we should be fully leveraging digital twin so that you can ask computers to come up with the potential solutions. But the more important, after that, you need to discuss based on those results, and then if it's really realistic, and also if there is any other elements that you need to consider, which machine learning or digital twin cannot consider. That will be the way to optimize your supply chain in the real world. And the next page, please. This is just for the reference. So when we are fine-tuning the result coming from the model, we are visualizing the result and talking about if this is really possible or not. Because in Japan, for example, from A to B, the distribution company can help you, but from B to A, it cannot be done. Those type of regulations or the situation is there. And then to discuss those topics, it's really powerful to visualize the result so that you can have a meaningful conversation within the management groups. Please go to the next page. So it's about last topic, the implementation approach. Please go to the next page. Yes. So we tend to have like two key phases to implement the digital twin. The first one is just the preparation. You need to understand what data is available and what will be the scope to create a digital twin. And after that, you will be creating the MVP, minimum viable product. That's around like 6 weeks to 10 weeks if you're doing it by yourself. And then lastly, we are spending around 2-3 months to scale it up for one site or production, the plant. So those will be the kind of typical work plan you can think of so that you can also implement the digital twin for your companies. All right, so these are my some of the thoughts on digital twin. Thank you very much. And then if you have any questions or like topics you want to discuss, please reach out to me or Kei Ganesh. He will be also able to answer every type of questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yoshiro-san. It was quite insightful, very similar to some of the conversation we had, experiences with some of the participants talked about, both the planning side and some of the operating sides as well. Appreciate you taking time. And I think we are just about top of the hour, so it's a good use of time. I think probably we can conclude, Dr. Banu, if you have any closing comments. Otherwise, thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time, insights, and appreciate all the points that we collected. And maybe the participants can share the queries to the CII team, and we can try and all respond offline as the case may be. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Girija, for moderating. Thank you.
Thank you, Girija. Thank you, co-panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.